You're listening to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-laws who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. Welcome, Tamara, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to begin with you sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I am a reproductive and perinatal mental health therapist. I work with women, supporting them through their journey of infertility, pregnancy, which sometimes includes pregnancy loss, and postpartum support, which sometimes includes postpartum depression and anxiety. So I work in private practice as a therapist out of Atlanta, Georgia. And I do coaching as well for women who may not need the clinical piece, but they want some coaching on infertility, pregnancy, and their postpartum journey.
Perfect. I love, and I would love to deep dive into your work, but you have a story. So take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your infertility journey.
Yes. So it was 2011. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, we weren't trying, and we became pregnant. It was a nice surprise. I had recently lost my father in 2009. So it gave me hope again, new life. I felt like, okay, my ancestors returning. And I was actually coming out of, the depression when I knew I had, this life to look forward to raising. So we had our first appointment. She said everything was fine. My doctor said everything was fine. We actually had an ultrasound sonogram, and we were able to see, a little embryo. And I felt fine. I was, progressing as normal with the morning sickness and, the signs that say that you're okay. And then when I went back for our 9-week checkup, she gasped, and I knew instantly something was wrong. And she just kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened." And then she said, "Oh, it looks like there was a hole in your sac," right? So of course, needless to say, I was devastated. Up until that point, I've had friends and family members who had miscarriages, but I was naive to the fact that you can have a miscarriage without bleeding. So I was just shocked. I really didn't understand what was happening. And she explained that it was a situation where I had a blighted ovum. And she explained that the embryo stopped growing and that we would need to do a D&C. And so it took me a minute. Took us a while to wrap our minds around it. And she said at this point, passing remains on my own would not be an option because there was tissue and that she would have to remove it. So then, I'm faced with, wrapping my mind around the fact that I'm no longer pregnant. My pregnancy is not viable. My pregnancy is not viable, but I'm still feeling pregnant and, having these hormonal reactions and having to continue to, move on daily, knowing that my baby stopped growing, but I'm still feeling pregnant. It was just a strange place to be. I just really didn't know how to process that. And so I had the D&C. It was a little more painful than she explained my recovery was. And at that point, we decided we wouldn't try again. We would wait, a little while to heal. And I was sad a lot. So it was like compounded grief. I went back to, losing my father, then losing the baby. And I remember I ate ice cream, I think for like a straight week. I ate ice cream and lemon cake for like probably 2 weeks. It was just comforting. And that's just all I could do I isolated from friends. We told our friends and family we were so excited. So then having to go back and say, the pregnancy wasn't viable, it was just re-triggering over and over and over again. So as time moved on, we did get married in, 2012, and we started to try again. And after about 6 months, I was like, wow, I'm not pregnant. We should be pregnant by now. So I went to my doctor and she did some testing and she said that my LH levels were not where they should be. And at that time, I think I was 38, turning 39 within that year. And so she suggested that we move forward with Clomid and IUI. So once again, having to process that, all the things that go through your mind, like my body's failing me, why couldn't this have happened sooner? I finally found the person I wanted to be with. It just so happened that I was older and this is who I want to start a family with. And now she's telling me that I don't have enough egg production. So, a lot of, I guess, guilt and shame and kind of suffering in silence, not really sharing that with anybody, just internally kind of beating up on myself. And so we moved forward with Clomid, and I experienced a lot of side effects from the Clomid. Homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, blurred vision, every side effect that was, on the package is what I had. And I didn't really reach out to my doctor because it said that's what the side effects were, right? So I just assumed that I just had to tough it out because I wanted to have a baby so bad. In hindsight, I probably should have said something, but I didn't. I just wanted to tough it out so that we can get our baby. And so we did one round of IUI and we became pregnant. And that pregnancy, lasted about 10 weeks. Throughout those weeks, we were in the doctor's office quite a bit. She kept taking blood and was saying that my HCG levels were not increasing. And she was like, that doesn't look good, but we're just going to, hold on to hope. So when we went back for a 10-week checkup, again, pregnancy wasn't viable. So she gave me misoprostol, medication to complete the miscarriage. I prefer the term reproductive loss at home. Which in itself was traumatizing. It's like I'm having these contractions and I'm, essentially birthing, but I'm not having a baby, a living child at the end of this. It was hard. It was more painful than she described. I didn't have adequate medication. She gave me like 7 pills. It was not enough. It's like, it was maybe like an 800 Tylenol. It wasn't anything strong at all. And when I called her back and was like, this is extremely painful, she's like, oh, well, I can't give you anything else. That should be enough. I just didn't feel supported by my doctor at all. I just felt very alone, during that process. I'm processing the losses one way, my husband's processing it in the way that, he's processing it. And so it was hard. It was hard for us on our marriage. Yeah, it was very difficult. So we got through that. And when it was time for my checkup, my doctor, she was like, oh, let's try again. And I just kept thinking, no, I just feel like something's not right. And she said, no, miscarriages happen. They happen. I said, I get that they're common, but I feel like something is not right with me. I feel like there's something else going on here. And I'm not willing to put myself through that again. And she was like, oh, no, this time we'll do follow-stem. I consulted my colleague who's a fertility specialist. And because I've never been through this before, I really did not, the light bulb didn't go on to say, well, if you consulted him, how come you didn't send me to him? Because she wasn't a fertility doctor. But I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. And so I just said, well, let me think about it. And I just felt, she just kept pressing, well, your age and, you're almost 40. And she just kept pressuring me. And I didn't like it. It didn't feel like it was coming from an authentic place. And it happened that a friend of mine that I went to college with called me that day. We hadn't spoken in months. And I told her, I said, oh, I recently had a loss. And she was like, oh, you need to see a reproductive endocrinologist. Never heard of the term before. So she referred me to her doctor, and I got an appointment pretty fast. However, he needed my result. He needed all of my labs. He needed my complete chart, which my doctor, my GYN, was very resistant in transferring my records. It took about total 3 months. I really, to this day, do not understand, why she would interfere with us trying to grow our family. It got to a point where I had to just show up at her office and say, I'm not leaving until I get my complete chart. So what she did do, she sent a 1-page summary. So every time I went to the reproductive endocrinologist, he was like, she keeps sending a 1-page summary. If you said you've been with her for 2 to 3 years, there should be more, right? And he was like, this is not enough for me to go on because I need to know what tests she ran, because these tests that I do are expensive, number one, and they're very thorough. And I need to make sure she didn't run the same test because you're not going to be able to pay for it. Just, it was very blunt. And so I was like, well, let's just do it anyway. He was like, Tamara, I'm not going to do it because you don't want a $20,000 bill for one test. Right. So I was like, okay. And so after like the 3rd month, the doctor, so he was like, just show up, just go there and get your information. It's yours. And she cannot deny you your medical records. And that's how I got my records. And then I was able to move forward with the endocrinologist, and he did extensive labs, extensive blood work, which at the time that took another 3 months. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. But I appreciate that, he led with integrity and he was ethical, in his practice. So we discovered that I had thrombophilia. So he explained that with the thrombophilia, my blood, was thickening, and it was difficult for the embryo to get nutrients. He said I had a gene mutation, so that every time I conceived, it would attack the embryo and think it's from something foreign. So it would attack the embryo. So he started treating me with Lovenox, and we went on just natural first. He wanted to see and I had a cyst. He wanted to see if we could shrink the cyst with, it'll come back to me. So we started just with those treatments and vitamins and trying to conceive naturally. And I would go and get blood work, and they would tell me when I was ovulating. And we tried that for 3 months and did not work. We were not pregnant. And so at that point, I remember distinctly, it was April and I was turning 40. And I was like, I just can't believe that this is my life right now. And he was like, listen, go on vacation, just try and enjoy your life. I think my husband had planned a cruise for me for my 40th. So we went on, he said, go on the cruise. And when you come back, we'll talk about next steps. He was like, you need to just relax and try your best to just enjoy your birthday. So he was very encouraging. So we did that and came back. And he said that the cyst had grown quite a bit and that we needed to have emergency surgery like that day. And I was like, well, I can't do it that day. I have to, clear it with my job. And he was like, it can't be more than a week, because it can burst and kill you. So that was, once again, like, I cannot believe this is where we are. Like, this is, every time I felt like I went back, it was just bad news. And so we scheduled the surgery. And I remember when I woke up from the anesthesia, he was standing over me, just like so excited that he got this cyst. He's like, the cyst was so big that it was the size of like a newborn baby's head. He said, I drained it. And when I drained it, I was able to see that you had 9 fibroids and endometriosis, and we got it all. Which, on one hand, I was relieved that I finally figured out what was going on with my body. But on the other hand, I was sad. Like, it really saddened me that I had all of these things going on. And I've had painful periods. I started my cycle at 11. I've had painful periods probably from 13 on, like excruciating pain, where I could not go to work. I would use up all my sick days. And every time I went to whatever practitioner I was seeing at the time, the gynecologist, I was like, I really think I have endometriosis. Oh, no, you don't have endometriosis. And I'm like, well, I didn't know. I thought you checked for endometriosis through blood work or something. Come to find out, that's not how. You have to, go in. They did laparoscopic surgery, and that's how you determine endometriosis. So on one hand, I was relieved that I finally had some answers. But on the other hand, I was sad and I felt, I was angry that nobody listened to me for years, that the previous doctor didn't listen to me when I kept telling her, I feel like something is wrong. As a matter of fact, I remember when I called her to get my records and I said, well, they really need my records because they think I might have thrombophilia. Oh, thrombophilia doesn't cause miscarriages. And I'm like, well, I mean, I Googled it and it says that it does. So I'm like, for her to tell me that, she was real flippant. And I just haven't felt seen or heard by any of my practitioners until I had this experience with the endocrinologist, fetal maternal medicine doctor. So it was both doctors, they were brothers. So they worked in tandem. And once the brother figured out what was causing the reproductive losses, then he sends you, they had a suite and he sent you back across the hall. And we worked on a treatment plan to conceive. And so after 3 months of healing, I had the myomectomy in, I want to say May. By August, he said, it was safe to start trying again. And so we did 2 rounds of IUI with, trigger shots, and my husband had to give me the shot in my arm. I continued to inject myself with the Lovenox preconception, and we conceived. With the second round of IUI. And, I was happy, but at the same time, once again, once you've experienced a loss, I couldn't allow myself to get too happy, because after the second reproductive loss, I just really didn't think, after the first one, I just really didn't think it would happen again. I just was like, okay, we'll get pregnant again and it'll be fine. And then when it did, I was devastated. I just did not think that it would happen to me twice. And so now we're pregnant, and I kept wanting to be happy. Like, I was excited, but then I said, no, don't let yourself get too happy because you don't know what's going to happen. And so it kind of robbed me of the joy of my pregnancy because of the fear, of that experience. Yeah. And so we carried to term. We did have some complications. I went into preterm labor about 3 times before my 4th month. And then he put me on bed rest, put me on some medications to stop contractions, total bed rest. He said all I could do was get out the bed to go to the bathroom and come back. So I was lonely and isolated and, sad again, not how I envisioned my pregnancy. My husband had to work, so he was gone, most of the day. I was in New York at the time, so my mother and sisters were in Atlanta. And so, it was just scary. It was a scary time. And then by 6 months, when I continued to have contractions, my doctors recommended a cerclage. And I just was like, oh God, I don't want to have another surgery. But he's like, at this point, we have to do it. And of course, he was like, it's up to you, but it's highly recommended that we have the cerclage performed. And so I talked it over with my mom. I called a girlfriend who had a cerclage to help her sustain her pregnancy with her twins. And she was like, just go on and do it. And she talked me through it. And so I did. And we were able to carry to 37 weeks. And we had the cerclage removed at 37 weeks. And then she was in distress. My daughter was in distress. So we had to induce. And then, we had my daughter, Nana Afia, who's 6 years old now. So we made it. We made it.
Yes, you did. You made it. Especially after going through complete bed rest. Oh my God, that's a journey in of itself. Share with us about how that feels and how do you navigate that part of the journey? Because obviously, you mentioned that there was some type of, almost some anxiety that you were having of wanting to celebrate the pregnancy, but then you just kept getting hit with, preterm labor and taking more meds, and then now having to be on bed rest for the duration of your pregnancy. I mean, that can also lead to other forms of depression. Can you share with us about how you navigated through that?
Yes. So I was seeing a therapist. She was a marriage family therapist. So we saw her for couples counseling, and I saw her individually when I was on bed rest. She missed the signs. I definitely had perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. I had OCD. I mean, all I could think about was, I'm going to lose this baby. I was anxious. I was worried. And once again, if I'm not trying to, throw any shade to her, but if you don't know, if you're not trained in it and you don't know the signs, you just don't know. Looking back, classic sign. I called my sister, I think, every single day. My sister's a social worker, and every single day. And she would have to just, talk me down, and it's okay. It's going to be okay. Like, breathe. Like, I would just be like hyperverbal. Like, I would just be talking so fast and like, I don't know what's going to happen. And she'd be like, okay, it's all right. It was very difficult. I did have a doula. She was a godsend. So, and another family friend of ours, he would bring us food because my husband's working like 11, 12 hours because now I have, no income. And actually, that's not true. My coworkers were amazing. I didn't have enough time to be on bed rest and still receive a check. About 3 of them got together. So I worked for the city of New York. So a lot of them had been there for years. So they had a lot of time, and they all donated, like each person donated maybe 4 weeks. And that's huge because for the 4 weeks they donated, the city takes 4 weeks from you. I think it's their way of discouraging you from sharing time. So they essentially gave up 8 weeks of vacation time for me, each one. And that is how we made it through. When I say it may not be the people you think that will show up for you, but God sends somebody, right? They were my God sent. And so that's how we were able to make it financially. So I still was able to get a check. He's working, long hours and still having to cook, because I can't stand up by the stove. So it's stress on him and me as well. It was just uncomfortable being in a bed. My behind hurt, my hips hurt. I was just uncomfortable. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. I would just sit there and watch reruns of, whatever was on TV and cry. I cried a lot. And I was so scared that my daughter was going to be a sad baby, but she wasn't. She was so happy. And so I started already with the mom guilt that I'm damaging my child emotionally, because I'm not happy and I'm crying every single day. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. It was rough. Prior to conceiving with my daughter, this live birth, I did go to a group therapy for women who were either actively in their infertility treatments and also had losses. And that was helpful because I realized I was putting a lot of pressure on my husband to show up for me in a way that, maybe he didn't know how or had the capacity to. And it really was unfair for me to expect him to get what I was feeling. I realized, okay, you need to talk to people who have experienced what you've experienced. And that was helpful. That was very helpful. But during the pregnancy, while I was on bed rest, I didn't reach out to the group. I think I probably had that survivor's guilt. It's like, okay, I made it. Now I'm pregnant. And I know some of the other ladies are still trying. And so I didn't reach out. I guess I was trying to protect them too and felt bad for them. So, yeah, that's how I got through that. And I ate ice cream, which my doctor said was okay. He said, go ahead and eat. So I was back on the vanilla ice cream. He was like, oh, the baby needs to get a little bit more weight on her, a little bit more fat. I was like, Haagen-Dazs it is. We're back on vanilla ice cream every day. That's what it was.
Wow, that is so funny. But I'm so happy that you shared that. Thank God for those angels at work, because Lord knows, if you didn't have them, it probably would have set you all back financially. It would have been difficult to go and navigate that pregnancy, knowing the financial burden that it would have been placed on, your husband to do all of the things. So shout out to them, because Lord knows God does send his angels when we need them.
Yes.
In unexpected ways.
So share with us how was postpartum for you? How did you navigate through that? Once your daughter came, did you experience any of that same kind of depressive states or anxiety of any of the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders?
Yes, I did. So I was aware of what it was because my sister had experienced it, and I watched her, and I watched, other friends go through it. And being a therapist, I was aware of the signs. So I knew by 6 weeks, I was like, no, this is something else. I was like, okay. So once again, I talked it over with my sister. I had a good girlfriend who would call me every day. She would call my husband and, talk to him and help him through it and help him support me, tell him what signs to look out for and how he can help me. I was just sad. I was depressed. I did have some OCD. I really thought that something was going to happen to her. I thought that, so we lived on a three floor walk up in Brooklyn, right? No elevator. So I'm now having to walk down the steps with this little tiny baby. And I was petrified. I just thought I was going to drop her. So I would make it to the front porch and I would just sit on the front porch. And then my next goal would be, okay, by maybe next week, you can actually open the gate. And then it would be, okay, you can walk down the block. Now, but getting out of the gate was hard because even though the cars were parked, in my mind, I thought they were going to jump off the curb and just hit her. Like, those are the type of thoughts I was having. Like, somebody driving down the street, that they're going to lose control and the car is just going to hit her. Like, I kept having this repeating thought that something was going to happen to her. And because I knew what it was, I would tell myself, this is a thought, it'll pass. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Like, I knew how to do the self-talk. I knew how to do fact over feeling. I knew how to do all of that. However, in hindsight, again, hindsight is 2020, right? My sister kept saying, Tam, I think it might be time for you to go ahead and maybe try and get on some Zoloft. I just could not put anything else in my body. I just was like, I can't. Number one, I was breastfeeding, and I know that Zoloft is recommended for breastfeeding, but I couldn't. All the side effects I had from all of those fertility treatments, I just was like, finally, I don't have to. Well, I still had to inject myself with heparin for about 6 weeks postpartum. I just did not want to put anything else in my body. It had been 2 to 3 years of feeling like my body wasn't my own, not feeling myself, feeling sick from side effects. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I suffered unnecessarily, I believe. I could have gotten some relief, but I could not get out of my own head to do it. And I just wanted to be present. I just was like, I just want to be. I don't want to have to take anything and remember to get up and take anything. I just want to be. I mean, honestly, I was so depressed, I probably wouldn't even remember to take the medication, but I had a lot of worry and just anxiety. And then I remember I would just sit and rock her, and we would watch Dinosaur Train, and we would watch Arthur, Daniel Tiger. And for something about Dinosaur Train just really calmed me. I really enjoyed the show. But I would just cry and cry and cry. The isolation wasn't good. We live like I said, I was in New York. I was in a big city. Everybody works 2 jobs. Rent is expensive there. People have lives. And just being in the house all day by myself was not helpful. It was not healthy at all. I did find one. It was a breastfeeding support group, and it was around the corner. So I didn't have to worry about putting her in a car, because that was nerve-wracking for me too. If I put her in the car, then I couldn't see her. And so now I'm nervous driving. And then if she started crying, I couldn't take the cries. The cries just really, it did something to my soul to hear her cry. It made me so anxious. So I did go to a breastfeeding support group, and that got me out the house. She was about 4 months when I started that one. No, maybe 3. And it was just a couple of weeks. And I met a mom, and she lived down the block. And so she would call me and say, let's go for a walk. Let's take the kids for a walk. And her son was a little older. So she would, talk me through, like, yes, this, like, in the beginning, you're really nervous and scared and all of that, and it'll subside. So that was nice. And so I would walk with her from time to time. And it lasted quite a while. It lasted a while, like a year. It lasted a year. And I was scared to tell my husband, which again was the irrational part of, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. I was scared to tell him. I just didn't want him to think less of me. I didn't want him to think, and he's really like the sweetest guy. I knew he wouldn't think that, but that was my thoughts. I felt like I would disappoint him and like I wasn't a good mom and, and he would tell me, well, I wouldn't have chosen you to have a family if I didn't think you were a good mom or you had the potential to be a good mother. He's like, I trust you, but I don't know. It was my own stuff. I just was scared. I was just scared to tell him. And so I finally, like about at 4 months, I let him know, like, I'm really having a difficult time and I can't stay in this apartment by myself. I'm going to go to Atlanta and stay with my mom for a month. And my sister had a daughter that was in high school. And so she would come over and stay and they would bring me food. And just knowing somebody was in the house, that's when I started feeling like, okay, this is the symptoms are decreasing because I didn't feel so alone. And, they would help take her. And even though I was nursing, they would still, let me take a nap and then bring her back when she needed to nurse. So that was helpful, coming home for a whole month and just being with my family.
Having that village of support is so necessary in postpartum.
Yes.
During this time, were you also seeing a therapist as well, the same therapist through that, or you switched to someone who really focused and specialized in maternal mental health?
I did not. I did not. I think I did. Okay. So the therapist that I was seeing when I was pregnant, I did go back to see her maybe once or twice, but no, we went back for couples counseling with her to help us through, navigate being new parents and communication and those things. But I did not see her individually. No. I know your family's not supposed to be your therapist, but pretty much it was me talking to my sister because I knew she got it. And so she would just talk to me every day and just, every single day. We talked every day. And, she just supported me that way. Mm-hmm.
No, your sister knew exactly what she needed to do, especially with her social work background. Yes, yeah. I understand that family aren't supposed to do that, but sometimes those are the folks that we can be vulnerable and transparent to. And if we know that we can go to them and they provide us, they know how to talk to us in a way that gets through to us, yes. I think that's necessary. And then on top of that, having that system around you is what you needed to get out of the place that you were in, being able to be around your family and saying them take the baby and then allow you to rest and really process everything the trauma that you've gone through, going through all the IUIs and then going through the losses and then, going through a traumatic pregnancy. It was necessary. And I can't stress the importance of having a strong village in postpartum because it's so necessary in order for us to feel like ourselves. I always say, who's going to mother the mother? Yes. They're focused on this baby, but the mother is really needs is really transitioning into this new continuum of their life as well. So I'm so happy that you shared that. So I would love for you to talk about how you got into this work as a, perinatal mental health therapist, because, ultimately what ends up happening in pregnancies, as you mentioned, a lot of therapists don't specialize in this. So they may not see the signs, during pregnancy and even in the postpartum period. So I would love for you to share your story on how you became a therapist.
From my experience. So I was already working, and I just remembered, if you don't mind if I go back, metformin, that's what they had me on to shrink the cyst, the metformin. That's what it was. So I was already working in the mental health field. I was working in City Hospital, chemical dependency, working with clients who had comorbidities, so maybe a mental illness and the chemical dependency piece. So through that, I started working closely with the women who came into treatment, because it's very difficult for women to leave their children and go into a treatment facility for an extended period of time, 3, 6, or 9 months. That's what our program was. So running women's groups with my colleague, and the theme of loss always came up, right? Loss of the lifestyle, loss of family members when you're in sobriety, loss of friends who were using, things like that. And then for some women, loss of their children. Their children were in the system. They were unable to get their children back, or some I was helping them with reunification. And then there were others who, I would help them work through their shame and guilt of, I really don't want to be a mother. And how can we find a custodial parent, maybe a family member that can help take your children. So I was working with mothers and children in that capacity. And some of them also have reproductive losses. So from my own experience of not having that support made me realize, okay, this is something that we need more therapists to be trained in and to understand, because I just didn't want anybody to feel like I felt. I was like, if I can prevent someone from going through this and being there for them, then I was like, okay. At the time, I was like, God, why in the world did you have me go through this? But after coming out on the other side of it, I realized that I was being used for a purpose. And because and not to say that if you have never experienced loss or infertility treatments or anything like that, you can't understand it. I'm not saying that, but I got it from a place of experience. And I knew that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I would get, more training. I would go to workshops. I went to PSI, Postpartum Support International, did their training, did some workshops with NECA Hall, and, read books and, different things. And that's how I made this my specialty. And I'm really grateful that I have been used to help other women, because it's hard work, but I am grateful that I'm able to support women and their families.
Yes, absolutely. So happy that you made this your calling as well, because it is so necessary and so needed. And, you can use your own experiences to help those who are going through similar things. So I absolutely love it. So I would love for you to leave our listeners with some encouraging words, as we are navigating through this pandemic, because we're still in it. It seems like it's starting to open back up, but we're still in this pandemic. And I don't know if we really will feel the effects from a mental health perspective until years later, once we get out of this. But people are still navigating through it. It's still very uncertain for folks as they come outside, as we record this during the summertime. So what encouraging words can you leave with our listeners as people are just going through the journey for the rest of this year?
Listening to yourself. How I came up with the name for my business is Womb Wisdom Wellness. It's your womb informs you, it's your intelligence. Listening to yourself, trusting yourself. We are all gifted with discernment, right? And so really taking time to check in with yourself, prioritizing your self-care. And, I know we throw that around, but that can be as simple as, I'm going to take 5 minutes in the morning just to be still. If you meditate, if you pray, or I'm going to have tea, I'm just going to sit and just be in tune with myself, or I'm going to just listen to whatever song that inspires me, and being honest with yourself, being honest with where you are in your journey, and honoring that, if you have experienced a loss, allowing yourself to feel what you feel, allowing yourself to go through that process of grieving and mourning and releasing any guilt or shame that may or may not be attached with it, and finding those things that feed your spirit, helping to restore yourself again. It is not selfish to prioritize yourself. We can't take care of anyone else until we take care of ourselves. So really, really being radical about your self-care and making yourself a priority, giving yourself permission. That's the part. Giving yourself permission to prioritize your wellness. And if you've experienced a loss before and you're not sure if you want to try again, you'll know when you're ready. It's possible to still love the child that is, a spirit baby or in heaven now, and have love for the next one that's coming. I encourage my clients to include that experience when you do have your family. Include your spirit baby, your baby that's in heaven. Celebrate that life. We don't ever want to forget, making some type of ritual around it so that you're always connected. Energy never dies. You're always connected, right? And so it's a part of your experience. It informs who you are and where you're going next. So we never, ever, ever want to forget, right? And leaning on someone, if it's a therapist or a friend or a doula, someone who you feel safe with sharing. Got to talk it out and move it out, move your body. Remembering the things that did bring you joy, comfort. If you like to dance, if you like to paint, if you get outside, it's summertime, get outside and get in that earth, right? Give birth to something, right? Create something. Okay, I can go on and on, but those are things that have helped me going within and then releasing outwardly.
Thank you so much. So where can our listeners connect with you after this episode?
So I am on IG, Tamara Akua Hunter. Akua is spelled Akua. Womb Wisdom Wellness on Instagram. TamaraAkuaHunter.com. I do have a guide that I would love to share with your listeners, Coping with Pregnancy Loss. If you sign up for the email at TamaraAkuaHunter.com, I would love to send it out. Just things that helped me and things that other people have shared along the way. And so I just compiled it because I know for myself, I was scrambling. I was looking all over the internet, trying to find things when I was, after my losses. Like, I just wanted to connect somewhere. I needed somebody to tell me what to do, how to feel, all of those things. So I thought it would be helpful to maybe just have a guide to just share what worked for me and others.
Yes, perfect. So I'll definitely leave a link to your website in the show notes and description box. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey with us. It has been a blessing to me, so I know it'll be a blessing to the listeners.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. You have been a blessing and an inspiration. I wish you continued success, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.